Silence is not emptiness. It is strength contained. There is a power that builds in solitude. When you begin to turn away from the clamor of the world and look inward, most people fear silence because in the quiet, there's no distraction from who they really are. But if you can learn to stay silent, to become intentional with your energy, to not react to every voice, every ping, every opinion thrown your way, then you step into a different level of control. The level where you're no longer a product of your environment, but a designer of your direction. When you focus on yourself, you begin to realize how much of your life has been spent trying to impress, react, defend, and prove. Prove you're right, prove you're worthy, prove you're better, but none of that brings peace. None of that brings growth. True elevation comes when you look at yourself not through the eyes of others, but through the lens of who you know you can become. You don't have to announce what you're working on. You don't have to declare your goals. You don't have to post your every move. In fact, the less you say, the more you're able to do. You start pouring energy into your habits instead of into performances. You train, you learn, you refine. In the silence, you sculpt discipline. You build the muscle of consistency. You measure your worth not by applause, but by the promises you keep to yourself. The world moves fast. People talk fast. Opinions shift like wind. If you keep trying to ride every wave, you'll never build a foundation. You must go deep. You must get still. Focus on your health. Focus on your discipline. Focus on showing up for yourself before anyone else. When you do that, you begin to unlock a life that isn't shaken by every setback or by every criticism or by every failure. There's something special that happens when you stop trying to be seen and start trying to be better. Better in how you think. Better in how you act. Better in how you manage your time, your emotions, your energy. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop defending your moves, stop reacting to people who don't deserve your attention, you gain power. You build momentum. You realize that people's opinions are cheap, but your growth is priceless. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your transformation. Some people want to keep you in the same place because it makes them feel more comfortable. They'll question your silence. They'll call it arrogance. They'll label your discipline as obsession. But that's not your business. You weren't born to fit in their mold. You were built to grow through every storm, even when it's quiet. Especially when it's quiet, because silence is where the real work happens. When no one is clapping, when no one is watching, that's when your mindset gets forged. That's when your character gets carved. Every time you rise early, train, study, reflect, push, breathe through the pain, sit with your emotions without numbing them, that's growth. That's strength. And it's invisible to the world until it's undeniable. Stop talking about what you're going to do. Stop seeking motivation from others. Stop needing external validation to take action. You don't need a reason to grow. Growth is the reason. You don't need applause to keep going. Discipline is enough. You don't need the perfect plan. You just need to start. The rest will reveal itself when you're in motion. Silence allows you to hear the voice within, the one drowned out by noise. And that voice knows what you need. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't beg for attention. It's steady, it's calm, and it's true. That voice says, stay focused. Stay consistent. Protect your peace. Don't get dragged into every battle that isn't yours. Don't respond to chaos with more chaos. Stay above it. Rise by staying rooted. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to justify your distance. You don't need to explain your glow up. Let people assume. Let them wonder. Let your results speak so loud that your silence becomes legendary. Remember, people talk about others more than they talk to themselves. Let them. While they waste breath, you build. While they gossip, you grind. While they scroll, you sculpt. Everything doesn't need your attention. Every comment doesn't need a reply. Every challenge doesn't need a confrontation. Focus is a weapon. Aim it well. Use your time like it matters, because it does. There are levels of clarity you can only reach when you're undistracted, when your mental space is no longer cluttered with drama, judgment, or comparison. That's when your instincts sharpen. That's when you start making moves not out of fear or ego, but from alignment. If you want change, be silent, not because you're hiding, but because you're preparing, you're evolving. Growth is quiet. Maturity is silent. Mastery whispers. Let them think you disappeared. Let them wonder where you went. And when they see you again, let the difference be so undeniable, it doesn't need to be explained. You can't rise while keeping every door open. You must choose. Choose yourself over distraction. Choose growth over comfort. Choose progress over praise. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. Because nothing beats the peace that comes from knowing you're doing the work, even when nobody's watching. Silence reveals priorities. Look at where your time goes when no one is looking. That's who you are becoming. If it's spent complaining, comparing, consuming, then chaos grows. But if it's spent learning, moving, resting with purpose, then life bends in your direction. Don't underestimate the days when nothing seems to be happening. Often that's when the biggest shifts are taking root. Stay low, stay learning, stay moving. And one day you'll look up and realize that while others were chasing attention, you were building alignment. While they ran in circles, you walked forward. While they shouted for the spotlight, you found your light. And that light doesn't need permission to shine. True focus isn't about external affirmation, it's about internal clarity. When you step away from the noise, you gain the space to really see what's going on inside you. You uncover truths you hadn't faced before. Where your energy leaks are, where your ego hides, where your fear hides behind distraction. In silence, you begin to understand what's blocking your progress, and you begin to dismantle it. Until you experience the peace that comes from consistent inward effort, you don't know what real progress feels like. You become addicted to growth, not applause. You begin to value your own path instead of chasing approval. You measure success through your habits, your attention, your daily rituals, not through likes, comments, or comparisons. And that changes your life. Think in terms of seasons. There is a time for silence and a time for action. Sometimes you retreat not out of fear, but out of strategy. You pull inward like a seed underground, gathering strength, building roots, preparing for the moment you break surface. That moment arrives only when you're ready. Until then, remain planted, remain still. When you stay silent, you also conserve energy. Every reaction takes something from you. Every defense you mount, every drama you engage in depletes your focus. You are a reservoir. Let your peace be the dam. When you stop reacting to every ripple on the surface, you stay deep, steady, resourced, unmoved. And when storms come, instead of breaking, you bend, but you don't crack. Life will test you. Silence isn't surrender. It's readiness. It's the discipline to not speak until you have something worth saying. It's the courage to withhold response until your position is undeniable. It's self-control proven through restraint. Every time you hold your tongue when attacked, ignored, ridiculed, you win, because silence is never ignored. It's always watched. It speaks in ways words cannot. Focus while others are scrambling. Earn while the world argues. Grow while distractions multiply. That's the essence of unseen power. It's the power of being too busy building to be bothered by the noise. It's the control of directing your energy outward, not inward into endless loops. It's knowing that your growth doesn't need a broadcast. You own your agenda. Set it ruthlessly. Guard it fiercely. If someone or something consistently breaks your focus, address it or eliminate it. Your time and energy are finite. Or spend them as capital. Invest them in things that compound, that elevate, not in noise, not in blame, not in excuses. Growth doesn't happen on someone else's timeline or in someone else's drama. Your silence isn't absence, it's presence. It's being so aligned that you don't need commentary. The result is what counts. The only voice that matters is the one inside you that says, I finish what I start. Build that inner voice until it drowns out everything else. That voice will guide you through chaos, through pressure, through challenges when others have lost faith. Stop telling your story, start living it. Stop explaining your purpose, start fulfilling it. The world doesn't need your narrative, it needs your execution. When your actions match your vision, there's no need for self-promotion. Impact replaces explanation. Presence replaces performance. And don't double-check your moves in public. You don't need to defend your path at every crossroad. Let your confidence be your defense. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. The silence between two people who know themselves is more powerful than the spoken words of many who don't. That's where focus lives, in the space you guard carefully, in the attention you direct deliberately. You must build a life that doesn't require constant validation. Start small. Stop posting every update. Stop sharing every thought. Stop asking for reactions. Put the phone down. Remove distracting habits that tempt you to seek praise instead of progress. When you remove the need for external applause, you begin to operate on a higher level. You begin to value your own standards above public drift. Let your personal discipline outpace your habitual needs. When you resist the urge to share, to reply, to urge, you reinforce control. You reinforce respect for yourself and your process. You redefine what success feels like. It's no longer flash. It's form, substance over performance, depth over display. Focus demands patience. Silence demands self-mastery. Neither thrives when you're in a rush. Growth can't be forced. It must be earned. You can't rush a tree to grow taller. You nourish it, you water it, you protect it. And over time, it grows. So does your mindset, your character, your strength. You quietly build until one day, the forest stands tall. Don't be impatient for confirmation. Don't crave response. Your path doesn't require public approval. It demands quiet consistency, quiet conviction, quiet confidence. You don't need to prove anything. The work proves you. Your standards prove you. Your persistence proves you. Keep your circle tight. Not everyone belongs in your inner ring. Too many voices dilute focus. Choose people who build you up quietly, who don't feed the drama, who respect discipline. Energy is contagious. Surround yourself with the silent doers, the disciplined builders, the ones who understand the power of inward work. Their presence keeps your inward flows clean, not clipped. Your attention is finite and sacred. Protect it. Don't surrender it to frenetic reactions or emotional contagion. Consume what helps you grow. Books, silence, movement, work. Skip what doesn't. Curate your inputs like you curate your habits. Protect the quality of your mental diet. Information is intended to empower, not entertain. When you stay silent, you begin to hear clarity. The need to know is above the noise, the whispers of growth above distraction, the truths buried under daily chatter. You begin to sense what needs to change, and then you do it, quietly, deliberately, without fanfare. Resisting your urge to publicize your process is like training until you're stronger than the need to be seen. Strength grows in the hidden reps, the early mornings no one knows about, the lasting changes no spotlight captures. That's where depth is made. That's where momentum compounds. And when the time comes for visibility, not sooner or later, you step forward like you belong there. Until then, stay quiet, stay focused, stay deep. Let your silence be your strategy. Let your energy go inward, into creating, into discipline, into clarity. When you're ready, your rise will be undeniable. Your position will be unshakable. Your results will speak for themselves. In the quiet, something powerful happens. A subtle transformation begins. As you commit to focusing on your own growth, and as you remove the noise and opinions of others, a stillness emerges, and in that stillness, a version of yourself begins to awaken that you've never truly met. You don't need applause, you don't need permission, and you certainly don't need validation. Because for once, you're not performing, you're not chasing, you're not pretending, you're simply becoming. Every moment you spend working in silence, disciplining your thoughts, redirecting your habits, and sharpening your focus, you inch closer to becoming unshakable. Not just successful, not just admired, but internally bulletproof. The kind of person who doesn't flinch when things go wrong, who doesn't panic when chaos comes knocking, who isn't swayed by the winds of external drama. Because while the world is shouting for attention, you're silently constructing a life rooted in principle, in clarity, in discipline. Most people live as echoes. They reflect what's around them, what people say, how people feel, what the world tells them to think, want, and chase. But when you focus on yourself, and when you remove the need to react to everything, you stop being an echo. You become the voice. And that voice starts inside, in the quiet, where there's no audience, no performance, just truth. There's a deep kind of strength that comes from being unavailable, not in an arrogant way, but in a protective way. You're not online 24/7. You're not emotionally reachable by every opinion. You're not a puppet pulled by everyone else's problems. Because your focus is rare, and you've decided to spend it where it counts, on yourself, your purpose, your habits, your energy. When you give energy to everyone else, you run empty. You give so much of your time trying to please others, respond to critics, maintain appearances, and chase expectations, and then you wonder why you're tired, frustrated, disconnected. You've been watering every garden but your own. And when your roots dry up, no flower blooms. Silence is how you return to the soil, to the root of who you are and what you need. This isn't about being selfish, it's about being intentional. It's about understanding that when you are whole, you give the world your best. But when you're fractured by too much noise, you give the world a broken version of you. You're more patient, more clear-minded, more powerful, more present when your focus is inward. The more you heal yourself, the less you seek healing from others. The more you know yourself, the less you need others to tell you who you are. There will always be voices trying to distract you. Doubt dressed as concern, envy disguised as advice, noise that looks like opportunity. But only silence helps you sort what's real. And in silence, you sharpen your instincts. That gut feeling, it's always been right. You've just been too distracted to hear it. And now that you've chosen stillness, you start hearing it louder and louder until it becomes impossible to ignore. You must get comfortable being alone. Not lonely, but alone. There's power in walking your own path without needing constant confirmation from others. Growth often feels lonely because elevation requires separation. You must leave behind distractions, toxic circles, old versions of yourself, and sometimes even people you love, in order to become who you're meant to be. It hurts, but silence holds your hand through the pain. When you stay silent and focused, people begin to wonder. They see you evolving. They sense something's shifted. You no longer react the way you used to. You no longer explain yourself. You no longer give access to everyone. And that mystery is powerful, because the less you speak, the more your results do the talking. And those results, they're the loudest form of revenge. The most satisfying response to doubters. The most undeniable proof that your silence was never absence, it was preparation. Preparation breeds power. That's what silence gives you. You learn, you reflect, you recalibrate. You see where you've gone wrong. You adjust. You move smarter. You move with intention. You stop broadcasting your plans and start protecting them. You no longer need to be seen. You need to be effective. And slowly, you start to live differently. You don't chase anymore. You attract. You don't seek approval. You create standards. You don't just survive. You lead. Because when you focus on yourself and stay silent, you remove the limits that everyone else tried to put on you. You stop playing small. You stop hiding your power. You begin to walk, talk, and act like someone who has a vision. And nothing will knock you off track. You become calm in chaos. You move without broadcasting. You grow without announcing. You succeed without seeking applause. And you realize the greatest victories aren't the ones people see. They're the ones that changed you when nobody was watching. Focus sharpens in the silence. As you move through life without broadcasting every thought or seeking validation, your inner clarity becomes your greatest navigation tool. No external noise can distort your vision when you've built a framework for truth that lives beneath the surface. This is where silent strength lives, in the quiet architecture of intention shaping action. Quiet confidence is not absence. It is presence forged in stillness. When you resist the urge to explain, to justify, to perform, you reinforce control, you recalibrate your energy. Instead of dissipating yourself in explanations, you preserve your momentum. Instead of reacting to every comment, you redirect your focus to what matters. You edit your life down to what empowers you. Each refusal to be drawn into needless exchanges is a vote for your progress. You start to realize that results are the only voice that matters. Results don't need a social media announcement. They stand alone. They speak through weight gained, minds sharpened, habits formed, projects completed. In that space, you begin to judge yourself by your output, not by how well you perform for others. And that shift changes everything. It's not fame that builds strength, it's discipline, not admiration, it's alignment. When you stay silent, quiet grows. As you grow in silence, you learn to trust yourself, your routine, your intuition, your process. You don't need constant feedback because your feedback loop is internal. You're accountable to yourself alone. And that accountability, unseen, unbroadcasted, is more powerful than the applause of others. People worry about missing out when they're quiet. They fear invisibility. But here's the truth. What's unseen ago still grows. Growth doesn't depend on attention. It thrives on consistency. A tree grows even when no one is watching. Roots deepen before the trunk rises. Branches remain unseen until they bear fruit. Your progress is no different. Quiet work compounds until it becomes visible on the outside. Silence is the teacher of authenticity. When you stay silent, you begin to peel away layers. Other people's opinions, societal expectations, inherited doubts, habitual performances. You reconnect with the foundational truth of who you are. And once that core is solid, everything else becomes easier. Your decisions, your energy, your clarity, and your confidence. There are seasons when silence isn't just a strategy, it's essential. When you're building something new, it deserves privacy. When you're healing, you deserve solitude. When you're growing beyond what people know, you deserve stillness. Not everyone understands it. Most will mistake it for withdrawal. But true architects of their path understand. The less you reveal, the more control you hold. The quieter you stay, the sharper your instincts become. Emotional impulses lose grip. Social media rants no longer distract. You learn boundaries. You understand that caring too much about what others expect is a crime against your own direction. And when people criticize your silence, that's just noise from people who fear your seriousness, people who don't know how to focus themselves. Silence brings humility, not self-doubt, but grounded confidence. When you realize you don't owe explanations, that your life is yours to build quietly, that you can outlast attention-seeking and still become iconic, you become self-possessed, a quiet force, a stabilizing presence, a standard others unintentionally strive to match. This path isn't popular, it isn't loud, but it is effective and deeply freeing because you no longer need external validation to feel strong. You don't need applause to feel worthy. Your worth is defined by your consistency, your attention, your refusal to drift, your refusal to explain, your refusal to perform. When setbacks come, and they will, you don't lose days over them because your foundation is rooted quietly. You reflect, you adjust, you recover, you strike again. In fact, your silence becomes your shield. You don't waste energy complaining or defending, you regroup and you return stronger. Each silent recovery reaffirms your direction. As you move forward, your life begins to reflect your priorities. Your schedule, your space, your relationships, your habits, everything cleans up to match the vision you're building. It's not tidy because it's easy, it's aligned because it's intentional. And intentional lives don't drift, they command. Remember, attention is currency, distraction is debt. Each time you engage with energy drainers, you spend reserves. Each time you stay silent and focused, you invest in strength. Your silence becomes an asset. It compounds. It rallies your focus. It protects your peace. You gain self-reliance. The less you rely on external approval, the more self-sufficient you become. This independence is internal. It means you don't need an audience to validate your vision. You don't need a record of praise for your progress. You walk anchored. You build quietly. You rise unapologetically. Over time, you realize the loudest things in your life are the outcomes of your quietest habits. Your results don't shout. They speak quietly but insistent lie. Loud whispers born of relentless discipline. You attract opportunities, respect, influence, not because you advertise for them, but because your results illuminated your presence. Your daily life becomes a temple of intention. The routines, the habits, the boundaries you build, you defend them fiercely. You don't allow noise to invade. When you protect your mental and emotional space, you cultivate clarity. When you cultivate clarity, you make better decisions. When you make better decisions, you craft better results. That's how silent focus becomes unstoppable force. This journey reshapes your identity. You're no longer someone who reacts. You're someone who creates. You're no longer shaped by chaos. You shape it. You don't perform for others. You perform for your own standards. Your focus becomes sacred. Your silence becomes legendary. And your life begins to align with the person you've always known you could become. Focus isn't convenience. It's discipline. And silence is where the discipline becomes visible. When you continue to build in secret, the muscles of patience, resilience, and clarity grow stronger. You begin to realize that the work you're doing when no one is watching carries more weight than everything you show to the world. It's in the quiet hours, those mornings before sunrise, those nights after everyone else is gone, that transformation takes shape. That's where the invisible becomes inevitable. You're sculpting your mindset in solitude, forging habits in stillness, and building depth in silence. While others seek noise to feel alive, you find energy in presence. There's a clarity that comes when you commit to this journey without distraction. Your senses sharpen, your decisions become faster, your vision becomes clearer. You no longer hesitate over every choice because your foundational values guide you. And when those values are polished in silence, they shine louder than any statement ever could. Comparison crumbles in this space. When you focus inward, comparisons lose power because you're not chasing someone else's definition of success. You're building your own. You spend time with your goals, your values, your standards. You measure progress by how much better you are today than yesterday, not by how you stack up against others. This liberation is radical. It frees you from the tyranny of public comparison and puts you in control of your own growth. Silence becomes a strategy for clarity, not because you're avoiding challenges, but because you understand that clarity is not found in chaos. You resist the urge to clarify yourself to others. Instead of justifying your methods, you calibrate them. Instead of defending your choices, you refine them. And instead of broadcasting excuses, you build results. Every silent decision reinforces a standard built on intent, not impulse, on direction, not distraction. This way of life demands ruthless guardrails. Not every relationship, opinion, or opportunity merits access to your focus. You create boundaries, clear, uncompromised lines around your time, energy, emotion. You say no more often than yes. You filter input until only what matters reaches your inner circle. That curation isn't cold, it's conscious. It protects you from dilution, drift, depletion. It preserves your upward trajectory. In the silence, you also cultivate self-awareness. You begin to learn who you are beyond your stories, your roles, your past. You sense blind spots, biases, default reactions. You start to understand your strengths, faults, fears, and blind curiosities. Then you choose to refine. You don't hide from feedback, you sift it through your values. You don't stay stuck in old patterns, you redesign them. And you do it quietly, deliberately, and often with discomfort. Consistency in silence is your altar. You make daily promises to yourself and keep them. Small investments, the early wake to up call, the focused workout, the mindful read, the zero scroll morning, the mindful break, the reflection before sleep. Over time, these rituals accumulate. They add up. You wake up one day and realize that life is not made of overnight leaps, but of small steps stacked without acknowledgement, without attention, until they create something monumental. Patience grows in that silence because you're not rushing for applause. You understand that deep foundations take time. That transformation, like tree roots, spreads long before growth becomes visible. You learn to stay invisible for a while, to hold space for work before display. When the right time comes to act, you are unstoppable because you've done the work. You've rehearsed silent excellence. You've practiced relentless focus. You're ready. Pressure reveals alignment, silence preserves it. People will test the boundaries you built. Critics will demand responses. Distractions will tempt you. But because you've practiced restraint, because you've rehearsed being undeterred, you respond with focus instead of flinch. You respond with clarity instead of chaos. You move with intention instead of impulse. You act as the builder, not the reactor. In your quiet consistency, you attract aligned opportunities. You become magnetic, not because you chase, but because you stand steady. You become someone others respect, even if they don't understand the process. Your reliability becomes rare. Your calm becomes contagious. Your integrity becomes evident, not by claim, but by behavior. Actions rooted in silence echo louder than words. You begin to realize that everything of value requires time. Everything meaningful takes repeats. Everything worth having grows under pressure, grows in isolation, and then flourishes in silence. The truly meaningful parts of your life aren't built in hype. They're built in hustle, repetition, alignment, and quiet devotion. As you go deeper into this path, you discover the difference between noise and signal, between distraction and intention. You learn to act on fewer but stronger impulses. You stop chasing multiple goals and focus on one deep intention. You prune away the rest until there's space for your primary vision. You simplify, streamline, fortify. You build a structure so lean it can only carry the weight of your purpose. Because when your attention is focused, when your energy is guarded, when your priorities are sacred, when you're silent, you become unstoppable. Every move you make carries force. Every choice you make reduces friction. Every reaction you avoid preserves momentum. And every moment you spend focused compounds. You build a life not of noise, but of impact. Your inner voice becomes the loudest in the room, not because it shouts, but because it's unwavering. A quiet voice backed by action, a steady reflection of unwavering intent, a command center rooted in discipline. And when your outer world begins to reflect that inner world, when your space, your schedule, your relationships, your results align, you stop questioning whether focus and silence matter. You see it in your life. You begin to respect silence as your ally. You learn to retreat at times, not because you're discouraged, but because you're strategic. You understand when to pause, reset, recenter. Not everyone knows when to stay, but only the wise know when to withdraw. In that withdrawal, you don't retreat, you regroup. you refine, you return more grounded. Eventually, your life becomes a testament to the power of silent focus. People may see the results and label it talent or luck, but you know it's the outcome of disciplined invisibility, focus without broadcast, energy without diffusion. You go deep, you build slow, and then you emerge calibrated, undeniable, unshakable. There comes a point where you realize silence is not an absence, it's an atmosphere, a place where growth quietly takes shape. Not in front of an audience, not with applause, not even with validation. True change happens when no one's watching, when no one's asking, and when you're not trying to explain. That's where you evolve, from within. When you stop broadcasting your every move, the pressure to perform disappears, and suddenly, you begin doing things for the right reasons, for you. You stop posting, updating, explaining, and you start building, refining, learning, not to impress, not to outshine, but because growth becomes your lifestyle. You wake up not to prove something, but to become someone better than yesterday. In your silence, the world starts revealing what really matters. People fall off, noise fades, distractions lose their grip, and you're left with the raw, unfiltered truth, who you are, what you believe, and what you're willing to fight for. That's uncomfortable, but it's real. And real is where change begins. You'll notice your energy shifts. The same situations that once drained you will now feel beneath you. Not out of pride, but from clarity. You don't react the same, you don't explain the same, and you certainly don't chase the same. Because when you're tuned into yourself, the world has less control over you. Your peace becomes non-negotiable, your time becomes sacred, and your silence becomes a shield, not a prison. The more you focus on yourself, the less room there is for comparison. You stop measuring your life by someone else's yardstick. Instead of watching others win and wondering why you haven't, you realize winning has no single definition. Maybe your win today is healing, or maybe it's walking away, maybe it's finally standing still long enough to listen to your own heartbeat. And that's powerful. The world will try to provoke you, test your silence, poke at your boundaries, but the deeper your roots grow in self-awareness, the less you need to react. You begin to understand that not every battle is yours. Not every fire needs your water. Some things are best left unanswered, undone, and unbothered. This level of self-control doesn't come overnight. It's forged through repetition, discipline, reflection, and solitude. You'll have days where your silence feels heavy, where focusing on yourself feels selfish, but those are the days that matter most. That's when your character is being reshaped, when your endurance is being stretched, and your purpose is being clarified. People might not understand. They might ask where you've been, why you're so distant, what you're working on, and your answer doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be lived. Let your actions be the loudest voice in every room you enter. Let your growth echo louder than any announcement ever could, because eventually everything does fall into place. Maybe not on your timeline, maybe not how you pictured, but it aligns. Why? Because you aligned first. You got quiet, got honest, and got intentional. And that is the foundation for anything real, lasting, and worth building.